Hi, my group is doing a research project for CMN 3109, and our research will focus on social media influencers and the public sphere. The concept of the public sphere was coined by Habermas that explained free, open conversation without influence in a public space. These public spheres enabled it to freely share and discuss ideas, and have since evolved into online and augmented worlds. Social media in particular has hosted many users and given voices to many people globally, expanding the boundaries of the sphere. New prominent individuals, coined with the title as influencers, now dominate the social platforms popularity-wise. From this adaptation, new online rules or norms have evolved, and new social constraints have also emerged. This video will argue that the relationship between social media influencers and the public sphere are mutually detrimental. Furthermore, negative impacts emerge from both the influencers and the public sphere, both online and in real life. Influencers and public spheres are codependent, but also arguably equally as destructive. Following a qualitative research method approach, our research aims at contributing and providing more insight to the reciprocal negative effects of influencers and public spheres that exist on social media platforms. The methodological approach that will be adopted when conducting our research will be using an in-depth analysis on previous literature reviews, case studies, scholarly articles, and academic sources that support and validate our thesis, which is called archival design. We will go in depth to argue that the use of influencers online negatively impacts both the augmented public spheres as well as the real-life public spheres. Furthermore, influencers on social platforms exist to promote themselves, which harms the authenticity of conversations surrounding them, as well as the individual pressure on the influencer to maintain a specific ideal that may not be maintainable. Unethical practices are also an area of concern when analyzing influencers in the public sphere. Many ads or sponsored content is posted with the intent of making money from the business interaction, as well as entice the audience to indulge in the item. Similarly, influencers often do not disclose that the content is not authentic or that it's a paid post. This form of content holds a strong negative impact on subsequent users that view the posts, as sometimes it sets an unrealistic ideal. These ideals are not tangible or authentic by any means, and thus corrupt the naturalistic elements of the public sphere. Influencers are not limited to advertising within the augmented public spheres. In fact, real-life events are created for fans to meet the individuals at events, such as meet and greets, or influencer-specific events such as TanaCon. And lastly, festivals that use influencers as a form of promotional to attract a wider audience, such as the Fire Festival. These events are examples of how augmented public spheres can spill or negatively impact the real-life public sphere, as people are constantly being influenced online. The public sphere was meant to be informative and transparent, which is opposite of what social media enables. Through all of the arguments mentioned, evidence will be sought by using specific instances of influencer habits or actions, as well as the analysis of recent events such as TanaCon and Fire Festival. When analyzing the evidence for our research, we found that using peer-reviewed articles on existing case studies or topics was the easiest method in order to timely analyze our hypothesis. We chose to do a qualitative method in order to tap into the resources that have already been searched into. So to begin, we found that the authors of the social media as the new public sphere claim that social platforms are individually centered. Also, depending on the platform, users can be media-centered, such as Instagram, or people-centered, such as Facebook. These platforms exhibit new forms of public sphere, where the individuals control more of the topics and conversations. Some individuals hold more impact than others, justifying the term influencers. The public sphere is not a singular sphere that exists. Rather, private and public spheres can exist parallelly and in tandem. Author Christian Fuchs determines that the two spheres can be broken down into public sphere or a sphere that is more intimate, such as family, which is determined by the private sphere. Although the public sphere is mainly where users and influencers live, the media can spill into the private sphere. Even more so, influencers can experience sphere spillover as their personal lives revolve around creating a certain appeal or aesthetic to an audience. Rather than promoting a truthful version of themselves, they often portray the best version or even a false image that's doctored. Not only is this negatively impactful to the influencers, it can also create an element of unrealistic ideals for users within the social public sphere. In another article called "Who Are the Social Media Influencers? A Study of Public Perceptions of Personality," the authors argue that social media influencers, or SMIs, represent a new type of independent third-party endorser who shape audience attitudes through blogs, tweets, and the use of social media. Social media influencers, or influencers for short, utilize the platform's abilities to voice brand allegiances. This content can sometimes be difficult to determine the authenticity. This contributes to the disturbances of online public sphere element and the element of transparency and honesty as the content can be forged. In a third article called "Self-Branding and Micro-Celebrity and the Rise of Social Media Influencers," the authors mainly argue that self-branding is a distortion of key branding principles. They believe that it's both detrimental to practitioners and advocates of the concept. The involvement of the influencers was able to generate enough traffic for the festival itself, and tickets sometimes even sold for a whopping $3,000 or more. This event spiraled into something a lot bigger through the use of public sphere, more specifically online public spheres. This was also seen in another instance where a social media influencer and also more specifically a YouTube influencer, Tana Mojo, decided to create her own YouTube meet and greet. Typically, there is a YouTube meet and greet called VidCon. She decided to create her own event that was centered around herself as well as a couple other YouTubers. These events were able to snowball on social media because it often reinforces the most unrealistic of ideals. Festivals, meet and greets are able to turn into something much larger when you have the ability to forge or make something look more appealing or sound more appealing to the audience. But both of these instances are examples of how social media influencers sometimes go to an extreme in order to please their audiences, or sometimes get more attention. When looking at the influencers in the cases, both events utilized the popularity and trust that was instilled by the influencers in order to promote consumeristic values. Also, the influencers had the prominent role in both cases, but also received pressures in order to constantly provide fresh content or relevancy in the spheres. Overall, with the examples of the case and studies as well as the article references, the hypothesis was confirmed that the relationship between influencers and the public sphere are mutually detrimental.